The ATF has appealed the frame and receiver decision to the United States Supreme Court. Will Bruin stop the ATF in their tracks? That remains to be seen, and it could be decided really, really swiftly. I want to thank the sponsors of the video, and that is Blackout Coffee. You can check us out at blackoutcoffee.com/GNG. There's like 25 days, 24 days left in our investment campaign. If you want to get in on that, the link is down below as well. blackoutcoffee.com/GNG. You can always save 10% with your order if you use my code GNG10. And TriStar Trading right down the street, great friends of mine. This is there from my Cold Dead Hand shirt. I also have my brand new Smokey the Bear shirt and some other cool stuff as well. Check them out, guys. They are great friends to this channel. Let's talk about the ATF and the Vanderstok case. So the Vanderstok v. Garland case is Firearms Policy Coalition's case suing the ATF, the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, and Stephen Dettelbach in his job as the boss man, the director of the ATF, on the unconstitutional redefining firearm, frame, and receiver. Now, if you've been following this channel, you know that the district court judge in the Northern District of Texas, Judge Reed O'Connor, vacated the rules, said ATF didn't have the congressional authority, the constitutional authority to change definitions. Threw the whole rule out. ATF whined and cried and begged for a stay. And at least if you don't want to stay your own order, judge, then just give us a couple days so we can appeal. And that's what the judge did, because that's what they're really supposed to do. He gave them an administrative stay of 7 days. They went to the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, three-judge panel. The three-judge panel said, you know what? No, we're not going to get rid of the stay on those two things that Judge O'Connor said you are acting in excess of your statutory authority on. However, maybe he was jumping the gun by vacating everything else in the rule. We're going to give you 10 days if you want to appeal that to the Supreme Court. And they just did that yesterday. On the screen is the case that is sitting in front of the Supreme Court. And what this is an application for a stay of the judgment entered by the United States District Court for the Northern District of Texas. So the ATF is asking the Supreme Court, who's at break, so one judge is going to hear this and decide whether or not to take this up or whether to involve the rest of the court. And what they're asking is saying, listen, SCOTUS, please, this district judge vacated the entire rule for the nation, and that in and of itself is putting public safety and law enforcement at risk, because those pesky people get to still have their Second Amendment right, and we can't control everything like the Marxist Nazi group we want to be. And I know some ATF are going to get pissed off because they watch this. So now they're asking the Supreme Court. But there's a wrinkle in this, and I think the way, in addition to that wrinkle, I think some of the things the ATF said, the way they said it, could actually hurt them in this case. All right, let's check out the introduction here. It says, pursuant to Rule 23 of the Rules of this Court and all writ acts, the Solicitor General on behalf of the applicants Merrick B. Garland et al. Respectfully applies for a stay of the judgment entered on July 5, 2023 by the United States District Court for the Northern District of Texas, pending the consideration and disposition of the government's appeal to the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, and if the Court of Appeals affirms, which they did, pending the timely filing and disposition of a petition for a writ of certiorari and any further proceedings to this court, the Supreme Court. This case concerns a district court's nationwide vacatur of a regulation issued by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to respond to the urgent public safety and law enforcement crisis posed by the exponential rise of untraceable firearms, commonly called ghost guns. Ghost guns can be made from kits and parts that are available online to anyone with a credit card and that allow anyone with basic tools and rudimentary skills or access to the internet video tutorials to assemble a fully functional firearm in as little as 20 minutes. Some manufacturers of these kits and parts assert that they are not firearms regulated by federal law and thus can be sold without serial numbers, transfer records, or background checks. Those features of ghost guns make them uniquely attractive to criminals and others who are legally prohibited from buying firearms. Over the last several years, police departments around the nation have confronted an explosion of crimes involving ghost guns. In 2017, law enforcement agencies submitted roughly 1,600 ghost guns to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives for tracing. By 2021, that number was more than 19,000, an increase of more than 1,000% in just 4 years. That's because localities changed the definition, and anything with a scratched off or obliterated serial number were also considered ghost guns. So it's just the guns that they've already been dealing with. And those submissions to ATF have been largely futile because the lack of serial numbers make ghost guns nearly impossible to trace. In 2022, ATF responded to that crisis by issuing a regulation updating its interpretation of the statutory definition of a regulated firearm. Actually, it was a demand by Joe Biden, had nothing to do with a crisis at all. In defining that term, Congress recognized that limiting the federal firearms laws to functional firearms would invite evasion, and it thus broadly defined firearm to include any weapon that will or is designed to or may be readily converted to expel a projectile by the action of an explosive. Congress also included the frame or receiver of any such weapon, ensuring that the key structural component of a firearm is subject to serial number, background check, and record-keeping requirements, even if it is sold alone. The rule addresses both of these prongs of that definition. It makes clear that a parts kit that allows a purchaser to readily assemble an operational weapon is a firearm, parts kits. And it clarifies that a frame or receiver includes a partially complete, disassembled, or non-functional frame or receiver that may be readily converted into a functional one by, for example, simply drilling holes or removing plastic rails to allow the frame or receiver to accept other parts. Okay, that's a decent opening, and then I'm going to show you the two parts here where I think the ATF might have stepped on their own toes here and really exposed how BS this rule really is. Check this out. And remember, text, history, and tradition, they're appealing this to the Supreme Court, who said that if it's not in the text, history, and tradition of this country as it pertains to firearm regulation around the time of the adoption of the Second Amendment, then it's no bueno. So listen to this part. First, contrary to the district court's conclusion, a weapon parts kit falls squarely within the plain meaning of the statutory definition, which expressly includes items that can be readily converted into functional firearms. Every speaker of English would recognize that a tax on sales of bookshelves applies to IKEA when it sells boxes of parts and tools and instructions for assembling them into bookshelves. The court's insistence on treating guns differently contradicts ordinary usage and makes a mockery of Congress's careful regulatory scheme. Now that first part there, yeah, they're saying that at IKEA, a box of bookshelf parts, everybody who speaks English recognizes that's a bookshelf. Well, not until it's built. It doesn't hold books when it's in that box in IKEA on the shelves. You can't put any props on it, like these bookshelves. I think they screwed the pooch on that one. And then this next part, they do it again. Second, the term frame or receiver is naturally read to include a partially completed frame or receiver that can readily be made functional. Again, that accords with ordinary usage. Just as a bicycle is still a bicycle, even if it is sold without pedals, a frame or receiver is still a frame or receiver, even if the buyer must drill a few holes or remove some plastic tabs before attaching other parts of the firearm. And again, the district court's contrary interpretation transforms Congress's broad definition of firearm into a self-defeating invitation to evasion of serialization, record keeping, and background check requirements. So the ATF is trying, they're reaching far to gain examples in which the Supreme Court will say, yeah, maybe you're right on this, and we're gonna stay this decision and allow it to continue through, trial by its merits. But I think they actually did the opposite here. I think what this will do is have the justices who just said text, history, and tradition is the way to be, and any other test is a step too far, they're asking them to do the totality of the circumstances. They're asking them to decide based off of public safety and law enforcement and take away people's rights. And they even say in this filing, which I will pin down below, that the risk posed by ghost guns and allowing this rule to be vacated is a greater risk to public safety and law enforcement than it would ever be related to us, we the people, if they took away our rights. We would be injured less, legally speaking, if the Supreme Court allows the ghost gun rule to remain in effect. They don't care about you or your rights. They just said it in this filing. Now, here's the best part. This is the wrinkle I said the ATF might have just screwed the pooch on. Listen to see if you find it. If not, I'll be right back to talk about it. This court, the Supreme Court, should stay the district court's vacator in full. A stay would prevent further irreparable harm to the public while allowing the litigation in this case and other challenges to the rule to proceed in the ordinary course. But given the gravity and urgency of the public safety issues at stake, if the court is not prepared to grant a stay, it may wish to construe this application as a petition for a writ of certiorari before judgment, grant the petition, and set this case for argument this fall. And there it is. The ATF is saying, look, justices, you should stay the lower court's decision and let the trial continue. Or, if you don't want to stay it, then just take this case up and let's settle it like men. Text history and tradition. There's nothing in the text history and tradition of the government, whether it's England or the early stages of America, where they said, hey, you can't have those parts. You were required to have those parts. Part of the Militia Act, you were required to have these things to build your own firearms and report from muster when called. And the ATF just stepped in a big, heaping, stinking hot pile of poo. And I don't think they even realized it. Guys, this decision could come very, very fast. I will keep you in the loop. Please subscribe to the channel down below if you want the information on the Second Amendment every single day. I will bring it to you because that's what I do. Welcome to Guns and Gadgets. If you're new here, I hope you stick around. And until we see each other again, be safe, stay vigilant, and carry a gun. To keep you, your friends, your family, your community safe, that's exactly why our forefathers gave their lives to separate from England and to stop the colonists from being disarmed. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.